Hi, everybody. I had a little something on my mind recently. Baseball in the 1980s, and thought I'd share some thoughts with you about that as I show you a picture of Ricky Henderson. Reference to the 1982 season when Henderson stole a still standing single season record, 130 bases. He, of course, went on to steal over 1,000 in his career, and stolen bases were very common back in the 80s. Vince Coleman of the Cardinals breaking into the majors in 1985, stealing over 100 bases. And it was it was very common for players to steal 50, 60 bases, if not more, in certain seasons. Small ball, the name of the game back in the 80s for the most part. And certainly players did not need rules like bigger bases and limited pickoff attempts like they have now in the majors. And all these pictures, by the way, coming from a book, and here is the book, just so there's no copyright infringement. All images belong to those who made this book, 100 Years of Major League Baseball, American and National Leagues, from 1901 to 2000. And here's Ryne Sandberg, who led the Cubs to an improbable division title in 1984, their first playoff appearance since 1945. And during the 80s, it was very common to see surprises like this. And I'll give you an example. 1985, the playoff teams were the Kansas City Royals, Toronto Blue Jays, St. Louis Cardinals, and LA Dodgers. While in 1986, the playoff teams were the New York Mets, Houston Astros, California Angels, and Boston Red Sox. Not one team repeated as division champions. And although only 4 of 26 teams in the majors during the 80s made the playoffs each season, other than 1981 when a strike expanded that to 8 teams, they made it split seasons. But still, only 4 teams made the playoffs that year, and instead of whining about we need more playoffs and this and that, teams just found ways to get better. They took advantage of free agency or just decided we want to play better. And as a result of that, 21 of 26 teams made the playoffs at least once during the 80s. The only teams who didn't make the playoffs were the Cincinnati Reds and Pittsburgh Pirates in the National League, though they would meet in the 1990 National League Championship Series. And in the American League, the Seattle Mariners, Texas Rangers, and the then Cleveland Indians, who are now known as the Cleveland Guardians. And no doubt Cleveland's tough times in baseball, as we know, led to the making of the film Major League, released in '89. And a big moment from the 80s, Pete Rose breaking the all-time career base hits record set by Ty Cobb. Rose's record was 4,192. He eventually had 4,256 career hits. Had quite the run. And the other thing about the 80s, the Game of the Week, the network Game of the Week, was huge back then. I mean, sure, as a whole, football might have been the more popular sport, and it certainly was, but during those summer Saturdays, tune in NBC, catch the Game of the Week, and consider the B team consisted of Hall of Famers, the B announced team of Bob Costas and Tony Kubek. Behind only 2 more Hall of Famers, Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola. Kind of sad I missed most of the 80s. I know that's an accident of birth as I'm just going through photos here. The Mets winning the World Series in '86 after the Bill Buckner error in Game 6. For the Red Sox led to Game 7, which the Mets won, their most recent World Series title. But born in 1984, I didn't understand too much about baseball till the 90s. Till I grew up a little bit. Here's Kirk Gibson after his famous home run. In Game 1 of the '88 World Series, led the Dodgers to one of the most improbable World Series wins ever over the Bash brothers and the Oakland A's. Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco, I'm of course referring to there. Just more teams being competitive, very unpredictable year after year, and the only team to win the World Series twice in the 80s, in fact, was the Dodgers. 1981 and 1988. That's the kind of parity that was in baseball back then. Though the 80s did come to a sad conclusion, as Commissioner Bart Giamatti banned Pete Rose for life in the summer of '89 after Rose's gambling scandal. And I believe less than 2 weeks after that, Giamatti passed away. I mentioned the network game of the week. Well, 1989 was the last year of that on NBC. And to me, baseball on TV hasn't been the same since. ABC was really good too back in the day. Al Michaels, Tim McCarver, Jim Palmer doing games. That contract also ended after the '89 season. And then during the '89 World Series in San Francisco, between Oakland and San Francisco, this is a picture of the aftermath of the big earthquake that struck right before Game 3 of that series was supposed to start, a 6.9 earthquake. 63 people dead, over 3,000 injured. 1989, just a rough year for baseball. Among the worst ever, certainly. Death of the commissioner, banishment of Pete Rose, end of a TV era, and the earthquake in the World Series. 1994 certainly is in there when a strike wiped out the World Series. 2020 when, well, certainly the more serious thing was the pandemic. Players and owners had a whale of a time figuring out how to get a season going. Those years are in there too, and although '89 was tough, still the '80s, quite the decade of baseball, and a decade I'll admit I wish I could have seen more of, looking back, but obviously can't control when I was born. That's the way that went. Thanks for joining me down memory lane and the looking back at the 1980s in Major League Baseball. Talk to you soon. For now, take care, everyone.